There are some ancient doors in the world that you cannot simply walk through since they are protected in a myriad of ways. Today, we are going to explore the 20 most mind-blowing ancient doors in the world. Let's dive in. Number 15. Al-Seq at Petra. What sets Al-Seq apart is that this entrance wasn't built by humans. Instead, the Nabateans found it and were so enchanted they decided to make it the doorway to their city. When travelers approached the city of Petra 2,000 years ago in what's modern-day southern Jordan, they didn't have to go through some grand gate. Instead, they walked through a sandstone fissure in the earth, formed due to a natural geologic fault. Spanning around 0.75 miles, the passageway is just 10 feet wide at its narrowest. During the 20-minute walk along the length of Seq, the red and golden giant walls loom up to 600 feet tall on each side, making the sky appear like nothing more than a small slit up above. Since it is a natural formation, the path twists and turns throughout, so you never see your destination until the very end. The city isn't revealed slowly. Instead, you keep walking, and near the end, a turn reveals the carved structures and columns up ahead, glowing in the sunlight like an otherworldly vision. Once you fully exit the canyon, the very first building you see is the treasury. Standing 131 feet tall, the structure is carved downwards directly out of the rock, decorated with statues, columns, and an urn at the very top. There was a famous legend that an ancient pharaoh hid his wealth inside this urn. In fact, that is what gave the treasury its name. In reality, though, there is no hidden wealth to be found here. The legend about the urn was made up much later on, and experts now believe the structure is the royal tomb of an ancient Nabatean king. Though that doesn't mean the story did not cause some very real damage. The urn is riddled with bullet holes from people who believed they could shoot open the secret stash and have gold rain down on them. Despite that, the building retains its charm, being one of the most photographed structures in the Middle East. Though the entrance that leads up to it shows that the marvelous architecture does not start here. It begins nearly a mile earlier with its grand entrance. Number 14. Abu Simbel's Sunlight Marvel. Abu Simbel is a great temple that was built by Ramses II in 1264 BCE, with the sole purpose of being psychological warfare. The entire temple was carved out of a cliff, but the most striking thing about it was the 4 colossal statues of Ramses flanking the main gate, 2 on each side. Standing 65 feet tall, these statues were designed to terrify and awe travelers coming from the south, specifically the Nubian territories, which the pharaoh wanted to impress. But the truly fascinating part of the temple is inside. As you enter through the main gate, you pass through a hallway lined with more giant statues. At the very back lies the main sanctuary that houses the seated statues of Egyptian gods Amun-Ra, Ra-Horakhti, and Ptah. The 4th statue is of Ramses himself, sitting shoulder to shoulder with the others. Throughout the year, this room sits in darkness, but on 2 days a year, something fascinating happens. The sun lines up perfectly with the gate of the temple in such a way that the sunlight passes straight through the corridor and lights up the inner sanctuary without touching the walls at all. The sunlight falls directly on the statues, lighting up the faces of 3 of the 4 figures. The 4th statue of Ptah stays in darkness, but that is not by accident. Since he was considered by the ancient Egyptians to be the god of the underworld, his statue is designed to stay in complete darkness. This level of precision is mind-blowing, as it means the ancient Egyptians building the structure had to properly calculate the angle of the sun and survey the surface of the cliff with extreme accuracy long before they chiseled out the entrance of the temple. Even a small misalignment would have resulted in the sunlight not entering the inside properly, ruining the effect. The level of precision here was further highlighted back in the 60s, when the construction of the Aswan High Dam nearby threatened to flood the temple due to rising water levels. So, between 1964 and 1968, a huge operation was launched in which the complex was cut into over 1,000 pieces weighing up to 30 tons each. The pieces were moved to higher ground and reassembled within artificial hills. The team in charge used modern tools to align the temple as perfectly as they could to its original orientation. But despite their best efforts, the alignment was not perfect, with the dates on which the inner sanctuary is lit by the sunlight now being off by a day. Still, its preservation is an admirable effort, a joint effort between the ancient Egyptian and modern architects. Number 13. Sigiriya's Lion Gate. In Sri Lanka, about halfway up a 650 feet volcanic column, there is a staircase flanked by giant-sized stone claws. What many people don't know is that these paws are actually the remnants of one of the most terrifying gates ever built by an ancient civilization. That's because these paws were once part of a giant structure depicting a huge lion made of bricks and plaster. The stairs in the middle actually used to go through the open mouth of the lion, which every visitor had to pass through to reach the fortress up above. Named Sigiriya, this place was built by King Kashyapa in the 5th century after he took power, by some accounts, after killing his own father. Fearing revenge from his enemies, he relocated his capital to this rock, as it was more defensible, and began turning the column into an architectural marvel. There are many wonders to be found here, like the gallery of paintings dating back to ancient times and the famed mirror wall, a large rock surface polished so finely that it used to reflect like a mirror, though all those wonders pale in comparison to the main centerpiece, the Lion Gate. According to experts, the full structure would have stood 115 feet high and 69 feet wide. The stairs used to ascend are nestled between the lion's 2 surviving paws and would vanish into the lion's head. Inside, they would ascend in a zigzag pattern upwards before coming out of the back of the head to continue onwards and upwards through the column. Every visitor would have to make this journey through the lion's mouth to reach the king's court, a journey that must have been made far more terrifying by the experience. Unfortunately, the head of the lion does not survive today. Experts aren't sure exactly when it collapsed, but we do know that it was a very long time ago, thanks to some ancient graffiti. People who visited the fortress as far back as the 9th century have carved graffiti nearby, mentioning them seeing the lion head and being impressed by it. Number 12. Ishtar Gate. The Ishtar Gate, one of the most impressive buildings from ancient history, can be found in Germany. But the thing is, it was not built here. Rather, it originates from modern-day Iraq. The ruler of Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar II, wanted the city's 8th gate to be grand, something awe-inspiring to fit the status of his empire. And so, the Ishtar Gate was commissioned and built somewhere around 575 BCE. Standing 50 feet tall above ground, and with a 45-foot deep foundation below to fortify it, it was unlike anything the world had ever seen. The double gate was colored completely blue, not using paint rather, through a technique called glazing. Each brick was individually covered in a lapis-colored glaze, making the final structure glimmer and shine as if made of glass. To further add to its beauty, nearly 500 animal reliefs were added, featuring bas-relief bulls and the Mushushu, a mythological dragon-like creature. The grand stature of the gate meant it could be seen from far away, and approaching visitors would know from miles away that they were witnessing something unique and marvelous. And as you got closer, you came across the processional way that led up to the gate itself, lined on each side by lion sculptures. The entire structure was a marvel of ancient engineering. But when Babylon fell, the Ishtar Gate too crumbled into rubble, lost to history. That is, until German archaeologist Robert Koldewey found the blue glaze fragments while excavating at Babylon, and when he investigated further, uncovered the rubble of the Ishtar Gate. By 1917, the large majority of the fragments were uncovered and moved to Germany, where they were put together piece by piece on a supporting structure, recreating the version on display at the Pergamon Museum. The wild part is that the gate on display is just the smaller front portion of the complete Ishtar Gate. The much bigger back portion of it wouldn't fit in the museum, so many of its fragments are in storage while others have been sold off to other museums around the globe. Because of that, putting it all back into one piece is highly unlikely. Number 11. Gate of the Sun. High up in the Bolivian Andes lie the ruins of Tiwanaku, a long-lost civilization that existed somewhere between 500 and 900 CE. While the rest of the ruins are fascinating in their own right, it is the Gate of the Sun specifically that has baffled scientists and archaeologists for the last 150 years. The gate was found by European explorers in the mid-19th century. It was lying down flat on the ground, having split into two parts. The gate was raised back up, which was no easy task as it weighed a staggering 10 tons. The gate had been carved out of a single piece of andesite, a very hard volcanic rock. It stands 9.8 feet tall with a width of 13 feet and a doorway in the middle of it. Right above the doorway is the depiction of what archaeologists call the staff god. Surrounding it are 48 attendants, 32 of which have human heads, while the other 16 have avian heads. The Gate of the Sun is a mystery in every aspect. First, archaeologists are certain that the door does not belong to the spot where it was found, as it is not aligned with the structures around it. Rather, it has no supporting structures at all, just a random doorway placed in an open area. Experts believe it was moved here by humans, and no one is able to determine where it truly belonged. Secondly, the stone gate was found lying flat on the ground. How did that happen? Experts aren't sure either. It could be because of an earthquake, but it's also possible someone deliberately caused it to fall. Finally, the biggest mystery is what the depictions on it actually mean. Some say they represent a calendar, others call it mere decoration. Since the civilization that built it did not leave behind any written or carved records, the truth is unlikely to be uncovered anytime soon. Number 10. Gantenbrink's Door. In 1993, a German robotics engineer named Rudolf Gantenbrink was called to install some ventilation systems in the Great Pyramid of Giza. There, he came across the two narrow shafts that run from the Queen's Chamber up into the structure at an angle. At the time, archaeologists thought these shafts were for ventilation. Curious, Rudolf sent out a small robot equipped with a camera into one of the 20-centimeter shafts to explore it. What he found was groundbreaking. The camera footage at first showed a pretty normal shaft, but after traveling nearly 200 feet, it came across an odd sight. Blocking the way forward was a well-finished limestone slab with two copper rings embedded within it. The appearance was oddly similar to a door with the rings shaped like handles. The discovery raised far more questions than answers. Why were the shafts, which are traditionally for ventilation in Egyptian pyramids in this case, leading to a dead end? What was the small door for? What lies behind it? These questions have mostly remained unanswered. In 2011, another robot was sent in to drill a small hole through the slab, blocking the way, and push a camera through the hole to look behind it. The camera feed showed an even more confusing sight, as behind the limestone slab was another similar blank slab, once again barring the way. These hidden small doors remain a mystery to date, as no further attempt has been made to look behind them due to the extremely narrow size of the shafts. Number 9. Plutonium at Hierapolis. Both the ancient Greeks and Romans believed that the city of Hierapolis housed the door to the underworld. For centuries, it was thought to be just a myth. But when archaeologists rediscovered the door in the ruins of Hierapolis in modern-day Turkey, they revealed a shocking secret. The entryway was called the plutonium, and it acts as the entryway to a cave behind it. The legend goes that a mist-like vapor would flow out of the entrance, and any animal like bulls led inside would collapse and die soon after. Meanwhile, the priests themselves stayed safe and sound, and much to the surprise of the experts, that story was not made up. Turns out the cave lies on top of a geological fault, which causes carbon dioxide to be constantly vented into it. Since CO2 is heavier, it pools close to the ground, creating the famed mist. Bulls, and any other animal for that matter, that were brought close or inside the cave would be constantly breathing in the CO2 since their heads are much closer to the ground. Without oxygen, the animals would collapse on the spot soon after and die. According to archaeologists, it is likely the priests were in on the trick, so they kept their heads higher up than the toxic pool, never bowing down enough to be affected. While the secret is now out, that doesn't make the plutonium any less deadly since nature is guarding it. Humans aren't allowed near it, and any insect, bird, or animal that strays too close dies within minutes. Number 8. Rolling stone doors of Derinkuyu. Imagine renovating your house and in the process finding one of the biggest man-made cave complexes in the world. That is exactly what happened to a man in Cappadocia, Turkey, who broke through a wall in his basement in 1963. Instead of mud, he found a tunnel. When he explored it, it opened into another tunnel, and that one opened into another. It just kept on going. It turned out the man had accidentally discovered Kuyu, a lost underground city that extended 280 feet below ground, spanning 18 stories. The scale here is massive. The man-made caves were big enough to house 20,000 people, alongside their livestock. According to experts, the city began construction in the 8th century BCE and was expanded over time. The inhabitants carved through the soft, volcanic rock using hand tools, and when exposed to air, the rock solidified and became much stronger, making the dig quite manageable. But what stood out the most about this find was the doors. At the junctions and entrances throughout the underground city, experts found giant stone doors weighing as much as half a ton, carved into a circular shape. This made it easy for just one person to roll them in place to bar the entryways. And this is where the engineering genius shines. The stones could only be rolled from the inside, where there was a recess that could be used for grip and leverage. From the other side, the narrow corridor made it impossible to get enough leverage to move the stone gates even an inch. Many of the gates were also found to have a hole in the middle, allowing the defenders to jam a spear through to fend off attackers. Not only that, but each floor could be sealed independently, so even if the upper floors were breached, the next gate would bar the way forward once again. The ventilation throughout the city was also carved extremely well, with the lower floors having their own wells that were inaccessible from the surface, making it impossible for attackers to contaminate the water supply to force a surrender. Number 7. Golden Gate of Jerusalem. The old city of Jerusalem has 8 gates, of which 7 can be used today. The 8th gate, the oldest of them all, is closed, and it has been for a few hundred years. The Golden Gate, also called the Gate of Mercy in Hebrew and Arabic, faces east towards the Mount of Olives and is said to date back to 520 CE. According to the Jews, this is the gate through which the Messiah will enter. According to the Christians, it is the door associated with Jesus' final entry into the city. And to the Muslims, it is said to be linked to the Day of Judgment. Naturally, the Golden Gate holds a lot of significance for all 3 religions. This has also led to its rather interesting history. The door was first sealed in 810, but was later opened again by the Crusaders in 1102. Then, in 1187, Saladin retook Jerusalem and walled it up once again. In 1541, Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem, and, in the process, permanently sealed the gate. And that is how it remains to this day. According to the popular theory, Muslim rulers kept blocking the Golden Gate to prevent the prophesied Jewish Messiah from entering the city. According to historians and archaeologists, however, that is likely not the case. The Eastern Wall, and especially the Golden Gate, was a defensive vulnerability most prone to attacks. And since both Saladin and Suleiman the Magnificent were engaged in military conflicts at the time, sealing up this huge vulnerability was the only natural solution. Regardless, this ancient doorway remains the oldest entryway to one of the most contested cities on the planet, and not a single person has passed through it in almost 500 years. Number 6. The Tirana Gateways of Sanchi Stupa. The Great Stupa of Sanchi in central India has some of the most unique gates in the world. At its entrance stand 4 gateways carved out of sandstone in intricate detail. Standing nearly 35 feet tall, these gateways are called Tiranas, and they are a part of Buddhist architecture. The interesting thing about them is they were not built at the same time. Rather, they were installed one after the other somewhere around the 1st century BCE, making them over 2,000 years old. And a unique indicator of their age is in fact hidden in the carvings that decorate them. Despite being of Buddhist origins, there are no depictions of the Buddha on the carvings anywhere to be found. That's because early on in Buddhism, depicting the Buddha was off limits. So each gateway depicts stories from his life, but instead of showing him, they symbolize his presence through other objects like an empty throne, footprints, and a wheel. But according to Buddhists, these gates did more than tell stories. They believed that the guardian figures carved on the gateways, like lions and elephants, protect against negative energy, creating a safer place behind them, free of chaos. Number 5. Doors of the Pantheon. The doors of the Pantheon remain the oldest continuously functioning doors, and the best part is, they still function just like they used to in the ancient past. Built by Emperor Hadrian somewhere between 120 and 124 centuries, the Pantheon and its gate are genuinely ancient. Made of solid bronze, the gate stands about 25 feet tall and 15 feet wide. It has a total weight of 17 tons, all of which is balanced on the original hinges on each side. And what's fascinating is that the hinges were made so well by the ancient craftsmen that even today, the people who are in charge of maintaining the structure say both gate leaves can be opened and closed quite easily by a single person. What's wild is that this gate was almost looted several times in the past. Throughout history, ancient Roman monuments, especially the ones made of metals like bronze, were regularly looted to be remade into something different. The Pantheon door survived similar attempts by looters due to its sheer size. While there are signs of damage near the hinges, no one was able to pry out the support to loot away the doors. Number 4. Colosseum's 80 entrances. The Colosseum was an architectural masterpiece that could seat up to 80,000 spectators at a time. But what's even more fascinating is that all those people could be seated or evacuated in just 15 minutes. That is a level of efficiency that even modern stadiums cannot achieve with much more advanced technology and automation. And the secret behind it all was the entrances. In total, the Colosseum has 80 entrances in the form of archways circling the entire structure. Of these, 76 were for the general public. The remaining 4 were for the VIPs, like the emperor and the senators. All the public arches had their own assigned number, painted red for visibility. Inside were stairs, again numbered, and finally the seats. Tokens made of clay or bone were handed out to the public as their ticket, and each ticket had its own unique gate, staircase, and seat number. The audience member would enter from their assigned arch, climb up their assigned stairway, and exit into the seating area through the vomitoria. From there, they could find and sit in their seats. The entire route of each audience member was pre-planned, leading to under 15-minute seating and exit times. This kind of efficiency has been hard to mimic even in modern times. Number 3. Taj Mahal's 20 sealed rooms. The Taj Mahal is one of the most recognized buildings in the world. But what many don't know is that there are rooms underneath the structure that no one is allowed to visit. The first room inaccessible to the public is, of course, the true burial chamber. The graves up above in the mausoleum are actually false. The real graves of Shah Jahan, the king who built the tomb, and Mumtaz Mahal, the woman for whom it was built, are located in a secret underground room that the public is never allowed to visit except for 3 days a year. However, there are 22 other rooms located underground that remain permanently locked. The existence of these hidden spaces has long fueled conspiracy theories and fringe explanations, saying the structure was built on top of a Hindu temple. The conspiracy theorists claim that the statues from that temple are kept within these secret rooms. Things got so bad that people filed legal cases in courts trying to get access and prove themselves right. But all those cases were thrown out pretty quickly, mainly because the real explanation is quite unglamorous and the contents of these rooms are no secret at all. In reality, the 22 rooms are just hollow spaces left by the original architect to reduce the weight of the structure so it wouldn't collapse on itself. Humans aren't allowed inside, except for special cases such as repairs, since the humidity spike caused by a person's breathing erodes the already fragile limestone. This can lead to cracks appearing in the very base of the Taj Mahal, compromising the integrity of the structure severely. Number 2. Qin Shi Huang Tomb. The discovery of the Qin Shi Huang Tomb was as accidental as it gets. Farmers digging for a well in 1924 found fired clay fragments, which led to the discovery of the famous Terracotta Army. 8,000 terracotta soldiers were uncovered standing guard over the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor to unify China. But these 8,000 soldiers, each armed with real and functional weapons, are only the first line of defense guarding the doors to the still-sealed tomb. Because the architects who built it left behind deadly surprises for anyone foolish enough to break into the tomb. According to records, there are automatically triggering crossbows rigged as booby traps inside that will fire on any intruder. Not only that, but the floor of the tomb had a landscape of china carved into it, with mercury running through it in place of water. This, of course, turns into a secondary trap, as mercury is highly toxic. For the longest time, these were thought to be exaggerations, but recent tests of the soil surrounding the tomb have shown abnormally high mercury levels, lending truth to the legends. But even if there are crossbows and toxic mercury inside the tomb, we do possess the technology needed to safely explore the structure. But so far, no such attempts have been made, as experts believe unsealing the tomb would destroy the intricate environment within that has preserved the insides for so long. So, for better or for worse, the Qin Shi Huang tomb remains untouched and well protected, just as it has been since it was first sealed. Number 1. Vault B at Padmanabhaswamy Temple. Among all the gates we have discussed on this list, none are as heavily guarded as the gate to Vault B. Inside the Padmanabhaswamy Temple in Kerala, India, are a number of underground vaults that were rumored to hold a vast amount of wealth. For hundreds of years, these were just whispered rumors. But in 2011, the Supreme Court ordered that the contents of the vaults be inventoried following a legal case. When the officials went and opened 5 of the 6 vaults, they couldn't believe their eyes. A copious amount of gold was stored within in the form of thrones, crowns, chains, and sacks upon sacks full of coins. There were also precious stones, like a sack full of diamonds. In total, the contents were expected to be worth billions of dollars. The real mystery, however, began when the officials tried to open the 6th vault. There was a series of doors barring the way. First, the officials opened a grill door, then behind it a wooden door, and finally behind it the 3rd door. They were unable to open the final door and left the 6th vault unexplored. The story gets crazier, however, as according to the temple tradition, this final door, decorated with serpent figures on each side, is sealed by the Naga Bandham. Hindus believe this is a kind of spiritual protection that unleashes a severe curse if the vault is forced open, and requires a special kind of ritual to allow it to be opened safely. The authorities wanted to come back to open the last door with a locksmith and inventory the contents, but the royal family in charge of it got an injunction and stopped that from happening. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court ordered in 2020 that the 6th vault should remain closed until the contents of the other vaults have been fully documented. So far, no further court order has been issued, but the whole event has created a huge sense of mystery about the unopened vault. Now, is it spiritually protected? Well, the vault has historically been opened quite regularly in the past, so the curse is quite definitely not true. But for those who believe in it, it is enough to prevent even the law from breaking in. That does it for this video. If you enjoyed watching, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.